we built a flour mill. Uh, we built a flour mill in 2008 as well on the property, and actually started with only 17 acres of wheat. So then since that, we've added a bunch of additional crops. So in 2013, we added canola to our rotation. We've also continuously had cover crops. We tried a few different crops over the years. So we tried barley, so milling barley. We also tried buckwheat, but there wasn't a huge market for either of those. So we kind of phased those out of the rotation, added fall rye as well. So then in 2010, actually, we started making a line of baking mixes. So if anybody's familiar with any of our products, we do pancake mixes, muffins, scones, pizza dough, cookies, cupcakes. So those we started introducing in 2010. And then in 2014, we bought a canola press. So it's a cold oil press, came out of Wisconsin, I believe. And so we added that to our line of equipment as well. So right now we've gone from the 17 acres in 2008 to 400 acres currently that we're covering. So like I said, we do rye, we do fall rye, and wheat are kind of our main crops. We do a little bit of oats. We do canola, and then so all our canola as well, I should mention, is actually a non-GMO. So we do either open pollinated or clear field. And then we grow a bunch of cover crops as well. So this picture actually is last year. So we interseed some cover crop wheat. So this is crimson clover in our wheat, looks like. So we sell wholesale to stores, bakeries, restaurants, some institutions, and then any surplus grain we have. So that's kind of our insurance policy. By covering more land than we actually need, we sell any extra grain we have to Richardson's elevator here in Thunder Bay. So Richardson's actually put in a truck dump a couple of years ago, well, quite a few years ago now, probably close to 10 years ago, for local farmers, so we can sell directly to the elevator. So that's kind of another revenue stream I have, and it's a way to get rid of surplus grain on a good year, and then on a poor year, then at least we have enough land that we can meet our own needs. So right now we're processing around 100 tons of wheat and rye, so that's strictly flour, and then about 30 tons of canola we press. So when we started in 2008, 100% of our sales were direct to consumer, so that was at farmers markets. I traveled around Northwestern Ontario attending markets. The main one was here in Thunder Bay, but I would go to Sioux-Lookout, Terrace Bay, Dryden, a few other of the local towns. But almost right away, then we started shifting into stores. So we started selling to some of the really small kind of local stores here. So there's a few small sort of meat shops, and we kind of got a little bit of shelf space. And then we moved from there, and then we started approaching bakeries and restaurants to move larger quantities. So I should probably actually go back. So my background is actually in biology and environmental science. So I got my degree here at Lakehead. So I actually don't have any background in business. So a lot of this was a very, very slow sort of learning process. And I say that because I remember when I first started selling to stores back in 2008, and approaching them and not really understanding sort of the whole wholesale connection and the wholesale system. So the first couple stores that I approached, they kind of, they were asking about what kind of markup and what's your suggested retail. And I had no idea how to really figure that out. I had an idea how to figure out my cost of production, but then didn't understand sort of the business model of some of these wholesale customers. So traditionally when you're wholesaling to stores, any bakery products, they put a 40% markup on. So it depends which category you are in the store, whether you're bakery, meats, produce, that number varies. So having an understanding of that, then I could kind of figure out how to price myself and how to give suggested retail prices to wholesale customers then as they move forward. And then again, institutions were the last ones kind of the last wholesale customer that we started to incorporate into our business. So now we've gone from obviously 100% direct to consumer. About 6% of our total sales are direct to consumer. About 30% are through retail stores. So we only wholesale to retail stores now. There have been times when we've worked on commission with stores or consignment system, but we've kind of gotten away from that. So any of the stores we deal with now, it's a direct wholesale connection. About 40% is to restaurant bakeries. So that's sort of the larger quantities, the 20-kilo bags, the 14-liter buckets of oil. 4% to local institutions. So that's, because I said that's fairly recent, we're just sort of cracking into that market. And then about 20% of our sales are the surplus grains to elevators. So kind of going to like focusing a little bit more on the wholesale side of it. So I'm a fairly outgoing person, and so I use that sort of to my advantage when I'm approaching some of these wholesale customers. And because we are such a small scale business, and we're such a local business that we really pride ourselves on that personal connection. So when we're trying to make some of these wholesale sales, whether it's with a store or with a restaurant or with an institution, I often will try to make that personal connection. So introduce myself, go in. There's nothing wrong with doing cold calls, but sometimes, just kind of giving it a little bit of a heads up, finding out who to contact, and then, going in and introducing myself, bringing some sales materials. So I put together a bit of a package, which includes, pricing, which includes a little bit of a introduction to our business, and then obviously bring some samples. And then kind of just sort of start that dialogue. And that's how I do it. So you approach them, keep that dialogue going, and then don't get discouraged. What I found when I first started, I would approach some businesses expecting that everybody who used flour, every restaurant or bakery or institution that used flour would automatically start buying from me. But there's a variety of different reasons why not everybody will. A lot of it has to do with price. Because of our scale, we are priced higher than most larger companies or most larger mills. But it also has to do with the product as well. So because our flour is stone milled, it's a little bit heavier, and it doesn't always work in all applications. So, we keep that dialogue going, but when, we are very understanding when they give us feedback, that they can't use our product for one reason or another. And then we could just continue that dialogue with our current customers. So we, every time I'm doing deliveries, I'm always, talking to the owners or talking to the kitchen staff, and just kind of keeping that going. And I think those connections have definitely helped us in the past. So we've had, different things have come up where we've sent a batch of flour that was damp, or I'm trying to think of some. We had, for some reason, 2 years ago, our gluten content was really low. So we were having some issues with certain batches of flour where the gluten wasn't holding as well as it had in previous batches. So just having that relationship, we were able to kind of work with those people. We were able to, take some product back and exchange it. Whereas if we didn't, or I feel if we didn't maintain those connections, it might have just ended up in a lost sale or a lost connection. So when we're talking about institutional buyers, so we started very recently, and it actually started with Karen from Food Strategy, who I see is on the call as well. She helped, as well as Dan Munshaw from the city of Thunder Bay, set up some tours. So we actually just had institutional buyers come out to the farm. Kind of we ran through what our process was. They got to see what some of our products were. And then, we kind of started that dialogue as well. The challenging thing with institutions, and we do this as well, we work with schools, is that a lot of their recipes and their their budgets are very restrictive. So sometimes when we're working with them, we, obviously we can't flex too much on cost. But when it comes to developing products for them that meet their nutritional needs and nutritional guidelines, we can really work around that. And so, like you see in this picture here, we have in the top right there's the wholesale whole wheat pizza dough. That was kind of developed to fit some of the school programs. So some of the school programs that needed whole wheat products in their menus. So they couldn't take like a white pizza dough, it had to be whole wheat. So we worked with them to develop that. And when we're working with some of these institutions in the city, we did sort of the same thing. So we made a bran muffin mix, but we made a lower sugar content muffin mix to sort of fit the nutritional guidelines. So yeah, so these relationships again are a lot of back and forth. So I guess in conclusion, when I'm going through all of this, like, we saw the breakdown of sort of how we diversified our products and then how we diversified our customers. So looking at direct to consumer all the way up to institutions and wholesale. And it definitely has helped to sort of stabilize our income streams. And we really noticed that during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, there was a huge shift as a lot of restaurants and bakeries were closed or very limited because of limited capacities or whatever happened. So we lost a lot of those wholesale customers. But by having institutions that were still buying, by having retail stores that were still buying a lot of products, that sort of was able to stabilize that income stream. So yeah, and it's really helped to make our business, or to help our business grow. And yeah, I think that's all I had. And so there's my two helpers who spend a lot of time in the combine with me. Yeah, if there's any questions.
Thanks very much, Jeff.
No problem.
All right, so Mike, if there's no questions for Jeff at this time, then we'll move on to Mike Visser, and feel free to share your screen, Mike, and start your presentation.
Hello, I'm Mike Visser from My Pride Farm in Thunder Bay, Ontario. I'm in my 11th year of producing and direct marketing ethically raised veal within Northwestern Ontario. I am currently finishing around 90 calves per year, which equals out to around 40,000 pounds of meat marketed annually. My products are sold through numerous different ways. I sell calves by the side, sell primal cuts to butcher shops, as well as having a large variety of individual cuts and value-added products available to the individual consumers. When I started out 11 years ago, a large portion of my sales were directly to consumer through on-farm pickups, home deliveries, and through the Thunder Bay Country Market. Although these avenues are great ways to market products through, they are also very time-consuming. It became clear that in order to expand my production and sales, I would need to start selling products at a wholesale level. Currently, 55% of my sales are through wholesale outlets such as Pioneer Ridge, which is a city-run nursing home here in Thunder Bay. Around 30% of my sales are direct to consumer through the country market and on-farm pickups, and the last 15% are derived through retail sales through different stores within the city. One interesting thing is when the pandemic hit, the institutional sales were the only part of my business that was not affected. So that was a big benefit. One common thing that I have heard from producers over the years is they say they can't afford to sell their products at a wholesale price, and that they are scared that other people may be making money on their products. I've always looked at this differently. When I look at the price of my products, I break it down into three different categories. The first being the cost of production. Secondly, the added cost of processing. And then finally, the amount of time, cost of storage, delivery, and effort exerted marketing the product. For instance, selling directly to the city nursing home, I have a guaranteed sale that happens every 4 weeks, only spend about an hour packaging and delivering over 300 pounds of meat. And therefore, I'm able to sell my product at a more competitive price because there's a lot less energy exerted to make that sale. On the other hand, when you're selling at a country market, I spend here about 10 to 12 hours a week packaging and pricing and marketing the products. So when you're marketing through those outlets, you need maximum price per package. Since I'm doing everything from production to marketing, excluding the processing, of course, I rely heavily on these wholesale outlets to be able to be being able to be as efficient with my time as possible in order to continue to grow my business. It has been an interesting experience building these relationships. Some connections have came out of attending workshops on local food procurement, some by word of mouth, others just by making cold calls. Building the wholesale market has most definitely takes a lot of time and patience. Some of my best outlets at the moment started out as very small accounts, but over time they grew. One important thing to keep in mind when you are direct marketing, you're not just selling your product, you're selling yourself and your story, so that when people do purchase products from you, they feel like they are also investing in you as an individual and the community. Over the last 11 years, I have spent a lot of time understanding the local markets and would say I have seen the most success come out of developing niche value-added products, such as my pepperettes, as well as having continuous supply of meat and maintaining inventory so that I rarely have to tell people that I do not have product available when inquiries are made. So thank you. I guess that was a lot shorter than Jeff's, but if you have any questions, please let me know.
Well, no worries about the time, Mike. That was great. Thanks for covering all that. Jeff, in the chat here, I've got a message from Peggy. So she's asking, what are the next opportunities you see in your business for growth or development? And what are your wholesale customers looking for?
I just actually read that too. Thanks, Peggy. So the opportunities, I think, so we're looking, because we're so recent into the institutional market, we're looking at kind of expanding that a little bit. You know, there's not just city-run institutions, there's a lot of private institutions up here in Thunder Bay. And I think the other opportunity we're really looking at is actually getting sort of outside of Northwestern Ontario. So right now we move a lot of product through, like in Thunder Bay, and through a few other retailers sort of across the Northwest. So we're looking kind of west of us, Dryden, Kenora, Fort Francis. But we're like maybe probably in the near future moving some product east. So trying to expand some of that. In terms of what our wholesale customers are looking for, that sort of varies. One of the big things always is price. And like I said, we don't have a lot of room to wiggle on that. So unless it's a niche product or a niche bakery, we often don't have a lot of room to vary on that. But other than that, I mean, once we find kind of that fit, so we find those wholesale customers that really are looking for that, that stone mill, that heavier flour, and they can use it in their products and market that. I think that's where we're really solidifying those really good connections. I hope that helps.
Thanks. And we've got a question for Mike as well. Two questions actually. So the first is, has there been any bottlenecks on the abattoir side that has prevented you from expanding into wholesale? And if so, how does that impact your costs?
I actually have a really good working relationship with the abattoir, and I've had no issues with getting enough products processed. One thing that has benefited me, because I'm doing veal, I can bring in calves it's a rotational basis, so I always know that every month I'm processing say 6 to 8 calves, so I can book 2 years in advance, and there's no issues with that. With the abattoir here too, it's also very much they're very particular. They want clean animals, they want consistency, they want quality. And so the abattoir and I work really well together, and that has not been an issue.
That's great. And the second question is, can you share any challenges or lessons you've learned regarding securing a supply contract with the Pioneer Ridge Nursing Home?
I personally have not had any issues, but I know others have, and it comes back to what I touched on in the presentation is supply. It's if you want to get into this, you have to make sure you have the product, and because they don't want to be told no, especially at a large scale. Like they're counting on that 300 pounds of meat this month. You darn well better make sure you get it there, because otherwise they'll just go back to Cisco. So.
All right. And if there are no further questions for Mike or Jeff at this time, then you are welcome to start your presentation, Peggy.
Okay, wonderful. How does that look? Does that look okay? Okay, I got a thumbs up. All right. Hello, bonjour, Ani, folks. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's lovely to hear other people's experiences with wholesale. Our experience is a little bit different. But I think it's all valuable to hear everyone's experience. So this is my husband and I. We operate Three Forks Farms. We're currently on Manitoulin Island. We actually started our farm in Warren, which is halfway between Sudbury and North Bay. And for many reasons, decided to move our farm, which resulted us moving in the beginning of 2020. And moving to Manitoulin and having a different farm property has resulted in all sorts of benefits. As was mentioned, we focus on 3 main enterprises on our farm. So we have pasture-raised chicken, vegetables, and seeds. Our entire operation is certified organic, and we have been certified organic since we started. Our current farm, our current production area is around 4.5 acres of vegetables, 3/4 of an acre of seed, and then I think there's about 2 or 3 acres that are dedicated to pasture-raised chicken. We currently are raising around 1,000 pasture-raised chicken per year. We were doing 1,400 through the artisanal program previously, but decided to reduce down to 1,000 based on what our production capacity is, and having a break in the middle of the season without chickens was actually better for our business overall, just in terms of our sustainability and sanity as farmers. Our largest enterprise is our vegetables, and it's kind of been our main area where we've focused on wholesale relationships over the past couple of years. But I will talk also about seeds, because seeds is now emerging as our kind of larger wholesale opportunity. So we actually do mainly retail sales is kind of our main area of marketing. And it was in 2019 when we did a really detailed cost of production analysis of all of our vegetable crops, that we were able to identify our top crops that we were confident in our ability to grow and get the best profit from. And so it was through doing the cost of production on the veg that we were able to confidently say, okay, we can go into these larger wholesale markets and move larger volumes on a consistent basis in the summer from vegetables. I will say it's a bit more challenging. The wholesale market on vegetables is a bit more challenging because of the seasonality. So there's this constant start and go every year that you have with your customer relationships. But the products that we do offer on a larger volumes are products that we can have for a minimum of 2 months of the year, every week, but preferably up to 4 months of the year. And it allows us to have a very consistent relationship with our customers. So yeah. I would say that the things, like as I mentioned, we focus mainly on our profitable crops. I would say that wholesaling, so we currently work with large scale grocery chains, restaurants, and caterers. The larger scale grocery chains have been kind of our main purchasers of wholesale, and being part of doing wholesale has been really good for our business, in that we've been able to improve our profitability overall while gaining more brand recognition with our existing customer base or new customer base, and it also has resulted in us increasing our retail customer base. So what we found is that in grocery stores, if we can get our stuff into grocery stores, we get more brand recognition, and it actually drives more people to our markets overall and to like our direct to consumer sales, which has been really beneficial for us both ways. So we're also able to move higher volumes. The other advantage to wholesale has been that we, because of where we live, so we live on Manitoulin Island, and our largest market, like city market, is Sudbury, which is 2.5 hours away. So by being able to leverage wholesale sales, we're able to make more profitable trips to the city on a regular basis. So we're able to fill our trucks with more volume of food and higher profit than we would be able to if we were just working in just doing retail sales. So that has been really important to us. And then the last piece about why it's been really valuable is it's allowed us to partner with really great food leaders in our community. So leading restaurants like Mark Gregorini at Verdicchio's, who's really kind of pushing the boundaries of what people consider to be normal or to be trendy food. So by partnering with chefs and food leaders in the community, we get greater exposure and allows for more opportunity of product growth for our business, which I don't think we would be able to do otherwise. There are some limitations, as I mentioned earlier, but we currently don't wholesale all of our products that we produce on the farm. We do not sell our pasture-raised chicken wholesale anymore. We were doing it wholesale for many years, but we found that currently our demand for the pasture-raised chicken exceeds our production capacity. So we're based on our current model, we're able to move more profitably through our retail markets. And we also don't sell our certain vegetable crops that we don't have on a consistent basis or that have lower margins, like a higher cost of production. So I think it's been really important for us to be able to differentiate what we are willing to wholesale and what we aren't. So as I mentioned, we work with large scale grocery chains, restaurants and caterers. We have tried, so I guess it was in 2021, we started the process of trying to get into the larger wholesale distribution chain through brokers in our area. And because we were ready to scale up beyond what our current sales were in wholesale, but we came up with barriers around HACCP certification. So because we're harvesting and processing our own products, the HACCP certification became a barrier for us to move into that market. Dealing with the grocery stores has been good, and I'm really grateful that we have them. I would say I am somewhat surprised, and like this is just on the vegetable side of things. The volumes when we got into those markets was lower than our expected, what we had expected from some of the larger grocery chains, looking at the volumes that we think that they're moving through. But larger grocery stores have purchasing commitments and a whole inventory management system that is a complex and probably would require a whole nother topic and workshop to talk about that if we were even allowed to. But so yeah, so the as much as working with the grocery stores has been good, the volumes have been lower than we had expected. So it's forced us to have more stores, wholesale grocery stores, than we had originally planned, but that's okay. We're still able to make it work. And I would also say with all of our wholesale clients, we usually work in case numbers only. So we don't do broken case. And if we have a broken case order, then they have to pay an extra fee. Some things that we have learned over, or some tips and recommendations that we would have about getting into the wholesale market, in particular with vegetables or with any product, is, I think there's two reasons why you might start wholesaling, and it would be that you have more production than you can sell to your retail customers if you're in retail, or that you don't want to do retail sales and you want to focus on larger volume sales. But in contrast, I think the reasons that you don't want to start wholesaling is that if you don't know your cost of production, so if you don't actually know your margins and how much money you're making on your crops, don't start wholesaling, because you might end up shooting yourself in the foot and not making the profits that you need. Also, I've seen people who have started wholesaling just because customers are asking for it. And wholesale customers want to buy things, but they want a better price. And that's not always the best reason to start wholesaling either. It has to be able to work for your business specifically. And then the last thing I would say, like if the volume doesn't justify the discount. And so we've had to really negotiate and kind of manage this a little bit, but we've had wholesale customers who, they want to buy, they want the discount, but in reality, like the volume that they want to purchase is less than some of our retail customers. And so we've started to have to create minimums for our orders, and to, as I mentioned, doing the broken case fees, just because packing orders, can actually take a remarkable amount of time in our system, our current system. So, we're always being very, very cautious about every minute of time and where we're putting it. So making sure that we're not selling wholesale pricing to customers that don't have the justified volume. And this is, again, based on our model, because we do have a blended retail and wholesale model. So the last thing I will mention is that seeds. So we are currently doing only about 3/4 of an acre of seed, but it's remarkable about how much seed you can produce when it comes to vegetables in that small area. And it's seed is one of our larger growth areas, and in particular from a wholesale perspective. So we have started doing contract production with other wholesale buyers, and this has been really great for us because we have not been able to do contract production on our vegetable wholesale. So in contrast, as much as doing wholesale is great, we don't have anyone that's going to commit to buying X amount every week. So it still leaves a lot of variability in terms of our planting and our production. Whereas when it comes to seed, it's not as perishable, and it allows us to do contract production where we know exactly how much we're proposed to produce and what the price is that we're going to get and when it has to be shipped out. And it's a very clear system. So this is kind of a growth area for us when we are looking at wholesale moving forward. And I would also say for like the lack of perishability, so we're continuing to look at more products that we can produce, value-added products on our farm that have a longer shelf life or storability, that would be greater opportunities for wholesale, as vegetables do have such a short window of time that they're available and that they're good for. So it does pose some other challenges. The other things that I would just recommendations moving forward for the people looking at getting into wholesale, and this was reiterated by all of the other speakers, is that maintaining great communication with your clients is so critical. I've found that the better communication we can have with our customers, the more stronger the relationship is. And when that communication breaks down is when we can come into challenges. So maintaining that connection is really important. I would also say that, updating your cost of production minimally annually, if not quarterly, in this current market, we're constantly having to adjust our market, our costs, because things are changing so rapidly, and we have to keep a very close eye on things to make sure that we're not losing money on our products. So making sure that that's done. And the other piece is, as I mentioned, don't discount your products unless the volume justifies. So having case lots was really important for us in order to justify the time and the packaging required to do wholesale. And the last thing I will mention is not putting all of your eggs in one basket. And one of the reasons why we have decided to have this blended model of direct to consumer retail and wholesale, and not putting all of our eggs in the wholesale basket, which was originally our plan, was we had two of our largest clients, without notifying us, decided to not carry any local products anymore in the beginning of 2022. And they didn't tell us about that until we connected with them, ready for their orders. And they're like, oh yeah, we're not buying from anyone anymore. And we're like, oh, okay. So we really had to pivot like on the dime at that moment to find new markets for products. But because we had a diverse marketing stream, we were able to move that product without too much challenge. So for myself, I wouldn't feel comfortable wholesaling my entire farm products to one customer. But having that those good relationships with a variety of different customers has allowed us to be really successful in what we do. Yeah, and I think that's about it. So hopefully that gives us a good summary of what we do and some ideas or some recommendations.
I was going to say, Peggy, don't forget your last slide with your adorable dogs on it.
Well, I don't know if everyone will see that, but
so we do have a few questions in the chat here. So the first one is from Sean, and he is wondering, do you sell your products in larger stores like Food Basics or Metro?
Is that for me or is that for everybody?
That's for you, Peggy.
Oh, so we sell into Loblaw stores and Value Marts currently. We haven't been able to get into like the Sobeys chains, but we have been able to get into the Loblaw's chains.
That's great. Karen is wondering, how far away is the abattoir from Manitoulin?
So currently we are there is an abattoir on the island, although I'm not sure what their capacity is. But we work with Birch Lake Abattoir, which I think is about an hour and 45 minutes from us. So, and we've had a really great relationship with them and have maintained a really good relationship with them. thankfully. And I think also having larger volumes has allowed us to maintain a really good relationship with them.
And she also wants to let you know that you have beautiful seed packet labels.
Thanks,
And
Karen.
we have one final question from Eric, and he wants to know, do you know how much HACCP certification costs upfront and on an ongoing basis? And this may include the labor for cleaning / paperwork, etc.
So there's a couple of different pieces around the HACCP certification. So there's the adjustments to this facility which need to be made in order to qualify for HACCP certification. So our current facility would probably require, I'm probably saying maybe even up to $20,000 in renovations to meet HACCP certification. And then the process of becoming certified, I think the consultant's process would be a couple of $1,000s, and then ongoing certification, from a labor perspective, I can't justify that. And I'm just pulling these numbers off the top of my head, and people like David Thompson might have a better idea about this, but for our operation, the cost was just, at this point, we couldn't justify it based on the volume that was being proposed. So the numbers didn't crunch out.
Awesome. Thanks, Peggy. So David has a question for the panel, so we can start with in the same order and go Jeff, Mike, Peggy. So can you describe your negotiation process with wholesale buyers, if any, and any tips for first-time sellers looking to secure favorable terms?
So actually, I might go back. I thought of something when Peggy was talking. So I think in my presentation, I mentioned when I started approaching sort of wholesale customers, I started with a lot of the smaller sort of local sort of ma type shops. So there, you could interact and negotiate directly with. So probably most of the time you negotiated directly with the owners. As we got a little bit larger, a couple of years ago, both Sobeys and Metro opened up a local food program. So they gave managers a little bit more autonomy into ordering local food into their stores. So you still have to work through their head office. So with Metro, I think it's in Montreal. And Sobeys, I work with a gentleman out in Alberta. So you still have to do a lot of the paperwork through their head office in terms of setting pricing and kind of getting your SKUs and that into their system. But then you can deal directly with the managers. So I'm not sure if some of those programs are still running, but if anybody has any questions about that, you feel free to reach out to me and I can get some information. And then in terms of negotiating with some other wholesale customers, basically, like Peggy said, I work through my cost of production. So I used to update it annually, but now with the way prices of everything are going, I update it at least every 6 months. So my costs are pretty much set, and my price is pretty much set. So when I'm approaching wholesale customers, I sort of have I have different price brackets based on volume. So the number of 20 kilo bags a customer is buying. And so that is pretty much set. So in terms of price, there's not a lot of negotiation. If I'm moving products outside of Thunder Bay, then I add the cost of shipping on top of that. I'm not sure if you have anything, Peggy.
All right, great. And Mike, did you want to speak to this question?
So the only one that I really negotiate with a lot right now is the city-run nursing home. When we started out, we made the initial contract 7 or 8 years ago. We worked together to find a fair price that was a little bit above, say, the Cisco price, but still within a range that I was comfortable with. And then we review that annually, and now they give me about a 7.5% to 10% price increase annually based on inflation. So that's kind of how that's went with the city nursing home.
Awesome. And Peggy?
Yeah, for us, I think it depends, like it all depends on our customer because we have different we have different pricing for different markets, like and or different types of packaging. So, we have our retail ready packaging, which I showed you in the presentation with our UPC codes, and then we have kind of a more of a restaurant style packaging. It's different, like doesn't have UPC codes, is more ready for processing. And so I would say with our retail customers, when we're opening our relationships with our retail customers, like say Loblaws or something, we try to meet with the purchasing manager and then connect with them about our price list, So I would say we also do before we go into those conversations, we usually do some market research, which we're kind of doing on an ongoing basis and saying, okay, well, what's the current market, like what's the current price that they're selling certain products for, knowing, a little bit more about the industry and what kind of margins they're looking for. So making sure that we can price ourselves like within a decent range of competitive products. So, and then, so making sure we have our numbers in a good zone, I guess, for being in the grocery stores. And then we have conversations with them about, how we can best make sure that it works for them. So making sure that there's a really good, clear articulation about what's the communication. So some people prefer to communicate by text and they need a prompt. Some people want emails, some people want phone calls, making sure that that's clearly identified based on the customer. And then also talking to them about what other kind of accessory needs that they might need in terms of selling our products. So is that us doing like a product feature or doing shelf talkers, or is there other things that could help retail the products a little bit more, that would help them? And it's just like that little bit of additional support that they get. Because in the grocery industry, there's a lot of perks that they get for retailing certain products, in particular in grocery stores. So what we can do to help move the products is really important. And then in terms of restaurants, I would also say it's a little bit different. Some of our restaurants we've been working with for years and we have really great relationships with, and we've been able to kind of have this kind of very good ongoing conversation about where pricing is at. So some of our chefs will actually keep us up to date with where the market is on wholesale pricing, which has allowed us to really keep on top of things. But when we're opening a relationship with a restaurant, it's about saying, what are your needs? What are your volumes? What are you looking for? And also being okay to say, like, I can't give you what you need. I don't want to start a relationship with someone that I can't fulfill their needs, and then it's a disappointment for everyone. So there's certain restaurants that we've had to say, no, I'm sorry that we won't be able to supply you, just because it's not going to work out for you, and then everyone's going to be sad. That just sucks. But having those conversations about what expectations are, and then checking in on a regular basis to make sure that our quality is where it's at. So there's that. And then on our seed, we usually check in once seed shipped. We do the brokerage and we do the production planning. So usually at this point, we're only doing wholesale with people that we know within the industry. So that has been a really kind of positive interaction. So that's kind of how we go about making those relationships.
Awesome. I've got one more question for you specifically, Peggy, and then one question for everyone on the panel. So Sean wants to know, does your price for vegetables change constantly with Loblaws throughout the year?
No, we set our prices for the year and we stick with it for better or worse. But in the heat of the season, it's really challenging for us to start shifting pricing unless something really, really drastic happens. But usually we try to set our prices by beginning of May. By beginning of May, we pretty much know where things are at, and then we can set them.
Awesome. So this is the final question for each of the panel speakers. Can you share your experiences in managing the logistical challenges associated with entering the wholesale market, such as transportation, storage, and maintaining product quality throughout the supply chain?
Yeah, so I'll be pretty quick because I think Peggy and Mike probably have more logistical issues than I do. Thankfully for me, I have a very shelf stable product. So it's stable at room temperature. It has a long shelf life. So in terms of maintaining quality and storage, you know, we're constantly milling. So our product that's going out the door is fairly fresh, but it can sit in storerooms or on store shelves for a month or two and still be fine. In terms of transportation in the city of Thunder Bay, we do all of our own deliveries. So we have our own transportation system. Any transportation outside of Thunder Bay, right now we're using Loudon. So they're a distributor here in Thunder Bay, and they distribute to Northwestern Ontario. So we kind of worked out a relationship with them so we can drop stuff off at their loading dock and then they can move it elsewhere.
Great. And Mike?
Yeah, so I also have a bit of an advantage that there is a lot of shelf stable shelf life with my product as well. But where I have run into more logistical challenges is building markets outside of Thunder Bay. Like we've been working on different times trying to build markets within like Dryden and Emo, Fort Francis, and to the northeast too. But it's a challenge. The transportation challenge is still there, like even as a consortium of producers, we trying to work together. Like we just can't justify the costs of it. And like with Loudon's, they have barriers in place like that. They will not accept my product to be able to transport it because they only want like federally inspected meat, and of course mine's provincial, so that's a challenge there too. But still overall the business is growing and we're still happy. So
great. And Peggy, is there anything you wanted to speak to around this question?
Yeah, I think like similar to what the other speakers have said, I think for us, like the key thing for a product quality is starting off at the right place. So we take great care to make sure that we're treating our product really, really well off the get-go, from the point of even from when we're harvesting, the timing of harvesting, and then the quick, like being very quick to doing processing to like get stuff in chilled or processed so that it will last longer. Thankfully, because of our processes, many of our retailers have said that our product lasts much longer than anything else that they have in the store, which is the best compliment ever. Again, we also struggle, I think, as many people do in Northern Ontario, to justify that whole reaching new markets piece. We've just mainly been focusing, because we have our own van, like we currently are only focusing on retail customers or wholesale customers that are on our existing routes that we're doing on a regular basis, so that we're not making extra trips or extra routes we just couldn't justify the volume. So I think that has worked for us. There are customers that we do want our product, but we have not been able to figure out the logistical piece on how to get it there on a consistent basis that would work. So yeah, I think there is definitely the opportunity for collaboration. So looking at how we could collaborate with other producers who are entering wholesale markets, particularly if there was like on the island, we have that opportunity, but that conversation hasn't started yet. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, I just wanted to take a moment here at the end to say thanks very much to our panel speakers and to all of our attendees. And once again, a shout out to the Lake Superior Living Labs Network, as well as Karen from Thunder Bay and Area Food Strategy, who's joined us today. Thanks, Karen, for helping us coordinate this and get us in contact with these producers, because I feel like this has been a pretty valuable experience all around. I also just wanted to mention that we will be sending out a short evaluation to those of you who have attended, just to get a little bit of feedback about what you thought about the webinar and any suggestions for events like this in the future, as well as to let everybody know that we will have a recording of this session up on our website at rainalgoma.ca. So anybody who had joined late and wasn't able to catch the first little bit of this will be able to catch up on that once we have that posted. And we will send that out by email to everybody who is registered through the Eventbrite page. All right, everybody, thanks very much for joining us today during this lunch hour. And I hope that everybody has an awesome afternoon. And a good long weekend also, I guess, considering it's going to be Easter.
Thanks.
Awesome job.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.